When I first started this painting, I didn't really know what to expect. I just felt drawn to the idea of a snowy, peaceful mountain range. Something about the soft blues and whites felt calming to paint. And as I slowly layered the colors, I began to notice a few things about gouache. How it behaves, how it feels under the brush, and how small adjustments in my approach made a big difference. This painting taught me more than I expected. It's not just about the outcome really, it's about the little discoveries you make along the way. So in this video, I'll share what I've learned from this session. Nothing too technical, just small, useful tips I picked up while painting this wintry mountain scene. Tips number 1 is to dilute your paint, unless you enjoy suffering. So the first thing I notice, gouache straight from the tube is quite thick. It feels almost like oil paint in a way. At first, I didn't think much of it and I went ahead using it straight, trying to spread it across the paper, but it just didn't flow very well. It felt like I was fighting the brush a bit. Then, midway through the session, I decided to dilute the paint quite a bit, almost to the consistency of watercolor. And suddenly, it made sense. The brush moved more easily. The paint covered the paper nicely, and I wasn't wasting energy trying to drag it across the surface. Now I realize, for the first layer, it's actually best to treat gouache like watercolor. Not only does it help fill in that stark white paper quickly, but it also makes the workflow smoother. It's something I wish I'd done from the start, but now I know. Tips number 2, thick over thin. Once that base layer is dry, I start working thicker. I still add a touch of water just to help the brush glide, but not too much. Gouache is beautifully opaque when it's applied thickly, and that's when you really start to see the richness of the colors. This technique, starting with diluted paint and then gradually building up the thicker layers, felt natural as I went along. It also gives you control over depth. You can push something to the background with a thinner wash, then bring the foreground forward with a more solid, thicker stroke. And because it's gouache, you can easily paint light colors over dark or vice versa without losing vibrancy. And tips number 3 is to cover the paper first. Details can wait. Another thing I learned is how important it is to focus on just covering the whole paper first, getting that base color in before thinking about details. I used to worry too much about jumping into the small parts early, but it's honestly better to block in the large areas, even roughly, and then slowly carve out the form with each layer. In this painting, once the base blues and greys were in, I could start thinking about the snow shapes, the shadow areas, and the subtle shifts in the mountain slopes. But without that first layer underneath, the details would have felt lost. So, cover the canvas first, then refine. Right, so next tips, number 4. Spray bottle is your best mate. Now one issue I thought I'd run into was the paint drying too quickly on the palette. I expected to waste a lot of color because it would just sit there and dry up, but it turns out that's not really a big problem if you keep a spray bottle of water nearby. Every now and then, I just give the palette a gentle mist and the paint stayed fresh and workable. It's such a simple thing, but it really helps keep the session flowing. Just a little mist can give you another 10 to 15 minutes of working time without having to remix anything. Next tip is to use a hairdryer a lot. One tool I didn't expect to rely on so much was my hairdryer. Gouache is a layering medium. Its strength is in being able to paint one layer on top of another without the colors underneath showing through. But that only works if the layer beneath is completely dry. So I found myself using the hairdryer quite often, not rushing the process, but just giving the layers a quick dry, so I could move on. It saves time, but more importantly, it prevents colors from mixing unintentionally. And again, because gouache is opaque, it's really satisfying to be able to go from dark to light without needing to leave blank space like you would in watercolor. You just dry it and paint over it. The last tip for today is that you don't need 72 brushes. Before this, I was convinced I needed every brush shape under the sun. Flat, round, liner, fan, dagger, maybe even a wand that paints clouds for you. So I bought the whole gang, thinking I was gearing up for some kind of epic gouache quest. But in this painting, I used two. One big flat brush for the base colors, and one small flat brush for the details. That's it. The rest just sat there looking pretty and collecting dust, probably whispering behind my back like, "Look at this guy, forgot we even exist?" Turns out, you really don't need a fancy arsenal, just a couple of reliable brushes you're comfortable with. The fewer choices I had, the smoother the painting session went, and the less time I spent staring at my brush jar like I was diffusing a bomb. So yeah, this painting was half snowy landscape, half accidental love lesson. Gouache is fun, flexible, occasionally annoying. But once you get the hang of it, it really lets you explore. If you're new to it, don't stress too much about being perfect. Just play with it, layer by layer, and maybe have a spray bottle and a hairdryer nearby. Trust me, they're game changers. Thanks for hanging out with me in this painting session. Hope you found something helpful, or at least calming along the way.